Each of us have probably seen a dozen videos on food storage, and all of them say pretty much the same thing. Store this handful of prepper staples and some freeze-dried meals and you're good to go. But if you or somebody in your family has food allergies or even food sensitivities, then it isn't that simple. Like my son and wife both have things that they can't eat. My son has an egg allergy, and my wife, while she doesn't have like full-blown celiac disease, does have a gluten sensitivity, and those are things that I've had to plan for when building out my family's food storage. So today I'm going to go over where common allergens like to hide, and then also give y'all some substitutions that you can use so that your food storage still has everything that you need. Right now there are 9 major allergens that you'll see declared in the US. They're milk, egg, fish, crustacean shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, soy, and sesame. And it's really important to understand the difference between an allergy and an intolerance or a sensitivity. An allergy is an autoimmune response, and its severity can range anywhere from just like mild hives all the way to life-threatening anaphylaxis. It just depends on the person and their specific allergy. If you compare that to just, intolerances or sensitivities, those aren't life-threatening. They can just make you miserable. Like my wife, if she eats something with gluten in it, like fried chicken, then she might get a headache for a day or two. But it's not going to be anything that puts her in the hospital. If you or somebody in your family has a very serious food allergy, you basically have to check every single thing that you store. Be sure that there's not that allergen hidden somewhere inside of it, and we'll go over those here in a minute. But also be sure that it wasn't produced in a plant that handles the thing that they're allergic to, because there can be cross-contamination and you have to look out for that too. But when it comes to the highest risk prepper foods, usually the general rule is the more complete or convenient the food is, then the more allergens that it has in it. So first up, there's freeze-dried entrees. These tend to be the worst offenders. A single pouch of that can contain milk, wheat, egg, and soy. And for that, just because one variety is safe, that doesn't mean that the next one will be. After that's MREs, and you have to look at these at the component level, not just the bag. An MRE will have things like the entree, crackers, spreads, desserts, and each one of those may have different allergens in them, so you gotta take a look at that. Then there's powdered milk, butter, or cheese powder, and those are obviously gonna have milk in it. It's in the freaking name. So be sure to look out for those. After that's wheat berries, flour, and regular pasta, and that's obviously a problem because those 3 things are sort of the backbone of a lot of preppers' food storage. Then there's condensed and dehydrated soups and sauces. Those could have hidden milk, soy, or even wheat in them. They're kind of used as bases for those sorts of things. So you really have to read the label on pretty much everything that you buy. Then there's protein and snack bars, and those are very allergen dense. They could have egg, cashew, almond, peanut, and all sorts of things in them. Then after that, there's nut mixes and nut butters, things like peanut butter, canned nuts, things like that. Those should be a little bit easier to spot, but if you're allergic to them, then they can be very, very bad. And then after that is ration bars, like lifeboat rations. Those, you would think, don't really have allergens in them, but they do. They're very heavy in wheat. They might also have coconut in them too. So the bottom line is that if you have food allergies or sensitivities in your family, you're a lot better off avoiding all of like the mega meal buckets and just focusing on simple individual ingredients. But getting into individual allergens, the first one that I'll talk about is egg, because that's what my son has. But this is present in a lot of different things, especially freeze-dried, like breakfast foods. You might also find it in freeze-dried lunches, like if you have chicken fried rice. Then it's also in certain like pancake or baking mixes. You might find it in sauces. Of course, it's going to be mayonnaise. And then even some egg substitutes might have egg in them, so that's something to look out for. But as far as substitutions go, if you're using it as a binding agent for things like burgers, cookies, or quick breads, and you can use flax to do that, mix 1 tablespoon of ground flax with 3 tablespoons of water and let it rest for 5 minutes. Or you can also use chia seeds in basically the same ratio, or you can make a cornstarch slurry by mixing 1 tablespoon of cornstarch with 3 tablespoons of water, and that equals 1 egg. Then for leavening and structure, like for cakes, you can use aquafaba, which is basically chickpea can liquid at 3 tablespoons per whole egg. And that's the only substitution that whips to meringue. And then you can also use Bob's Red Mill at 1 tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of water. For moisture, 1/4 cup of applesauce, pumpkin, or mashed banana can equal 1 egg. Then for actual scrambles, flax and starch aren't going to do it, so use blended chickpea flour at 3 tablespoons of that to 3 tablespoons of water. And it's important to note that if you're storing flax or chia seeds, you want to store those as whole seeds, not ground up, because like with, things like wheat berries, once you grind it up, then the shelf life is reduced dramatically. Then after that, we have wheat and gluten, and of course that hides in things like wheat berries, flour, pasta, and a whole lot of canned soups and stews. It can also be in bouillon, gravy sauce mixes, crackers, and a whole lot of different freeze-dried foods. Basically anything with noodles in it. One of the best substitutes for that is just white rice. We all know about that. It can store for decades. Then you can also get some gluten-free flour, but the problem with gluten-free flour is that it even has a shorter shelf life than regular like wheat-based flour does. It might only last like 1 to 5 years instead of 3 to 5. So if you do that, be sure that you put it in a Mylar bag with oxygen absorber, and even with that, continue to rotate through it. Probably my favorite alternate grain source, though, is gluten-free pasta. It stores pretty much just as long as regular pasta does in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, and it can be used in pretty much all of the same dishes. And if you get a good enough sauce, then the difference isn't all that noticeable. When we started switching over to gluten-free pasta just because of my wife's stuff, it did kind of seem a little bit different there for a while, but I have since gotten used to it. And that's just one example of the kind of planning that folks should do when they're building out their family's food storage. And if you want to build a food plan for your family, then be sure to check out my 30-day prepper pantry. It has a full shopping list, recipes, cooking instructions, and also fuel and water calculations. If you want to check it out, then be sure to use the links in the description and pin comment down below. But back to the list, the next common allergen is dairy or milk. And a lot of the times this isn't necessarily an allergy. It's more of an intolerance where, maybe you just get a stomachache or you end up farting a lot. But there are some people that are actually allergic to it as well. Of course, you'll find this in things like powdered milk, butter, and cheese. You also find it in freeze-dried meals that are, like creamy Alfredo varieties, or even instant mashed potatoes too. Some common substitutions for this are things like coconut milk powder, 1-to-1 ratio with hot water, and that has a 24-month shelf life, so it's not as long as powdered milk, but you can store it for a little while. But it is important to note, though, that coconut is considered a tree nut, so there might be folks that are allergic to that as well. Then if you want kind of a cheesy flavor, then nutritional yeast can be used as well. And then for fat, things like coconut oil, olive oil, and shelf-stable plant butters can be used for that. Then after that, there's soy, and it hides in textured vegetable protein. You also find it in soy sauce, a lot of meat substitutes, and a lot of packaged and freeze-dried foods, and even bouillon. Probably the easiest substitution to make for this is just going to be to have canned meat instead of that textured vegetable protein. Also, of course, things like rice and beans, when you eat them together, they form a complete protein. Most of us already know that. But then other things like lentils, split peas, and even pea protein powder. And if you're looking for a substitution for things like spreads, then sunflower seed butter can be used for that. Then after that, we have a really big one, and that is peanuts and tree nuts. Of course, those are found in trail mix, nut butters, granola, energy bars, and even some meals. And once again, it's important to note that the FDA counts coconut as a tree nut. Probably the best substitution for those is going to be sunflower seed butter. It's basically the same consistency as things like peanut butter. You use it in a lot of the same ways, but people aren't going to be allergic to it, at least not as much. And a cool thing about sunflower seed butter is that since a lot of varieties are produced specifically as an alternative for folks to use if they have those kind of allergies, is that they're not going to be produced in a facility that handles those other things as well. Of course, that isn't true all the time. It's something that you definitely want to still check the packaging on. But sunflower seed butter is a very good, viable alternative. Then another big one is fish and shellfish. And these are actually two very separate and distinct allergies. Like a lot of folks that have very severe shellfish allergies, like they can't eat shrimp or anything like that, they're totally fine eating things like canned salmon or catfish. And these can hide in some pretty surprising places. Like they can be in sauces, Caesar dressing, of course, imitation crab, fish sauce, oyster sauce, shrimp paste, and seafood bouillon. And one important note with fish allergies specifically is that even though canned fish goes through certain processes that might neutralize some proteins that people are allergic to, canned fish is not universally safe. I think around 66% of people who had fish allergies were still triggered by eating canned fish. So if you're allergic to fish, if you're allergic to shellfish, just stay the heck away from it. Then the newest allergen that's been added to the list is sesame, and this can be found in things like hummus and tahini, breads, buns, crackers, granola bars, chips, spice blends, and even dressings. And one big problem with sesame, especially if you're somebody who has celiac or gluten sensitivities, is that it's found in a lot of like gluten-free products as like a texture booster. So you gotta watch out for that if you're in kind of the gluten problem mode. Some common swaps for this are, once again, sunflower seed butter, white bean puree, and lemon and cumin for hummus. And if you have those kinds of food allergies or sensitivities present in your household, then it really should have a big impact on how you set up your food plan. Like, for example, we don't really buy freeze-dried meals anymore because so many of them have egg or wheat in them. We bought a bunch there for a while, but now it's to the point where I'm the only one that can eat a lot of them, especially the breakfast variety, so we just don't do that anymore. Also, I kind of mentioned this a second ago, we don't store regular pasta. We only store gluten-free because, I mean, storing both would be expensive, and it would be more cooking, more fuel, all that kind of mess. It's just a lot more efficient just to have one. And we also just focus on storing individual ingredients instead of prepper meals. I think we only have like one prepper meal bucket, and that was something that we bought a long time ago. And remember, with those, especially with the generic like infomercial varieties, a lot of times the taste and the quality on those are hit and miss anyway. So really, even if you don't have food allergies or sensitivities in your family, then there are a lot of advantages of just storing the ingredients and coming up with your own recipes compared to some of the commercial kind of crappy options out there. But if for some reason or another you're in a situation where there is an allergy present and you want to still be able to have that food for other members of your family, then you just have to be very careful with both how you store it and how you prepare it. Of course, the more severe something is, I think it's probably a better idea just to get rid of it, because, I mean, there's no reason in having something that's essentially poison to one member of your family present so that other folks can enjoy it. That's just an invitation for something horrible to happen, and if it does happen, then there's a very good chance that it's going to be in a situation where you already don't have access to medical care. So, I would just get rid of it. Now, if you want to see ways to keep your food cold without a generator, then click here. Or if you want to see some big mistakes that preppers make when setting up their food plan, then click here. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.